Bonjour, bienvenue à Brownlow Books. Je suis Charlotte et aujourd'hui je vais revoir Dimitri Nasrallah Hotline. That was 90% of my French. Okay, we're going to talk about Hotline by Dimitri Nasrallah. Blanket spoiler warning. I'm going to avoid it. It's mild spoilers, alright? I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. My notes just fell. Okay. So, base storyline you need to know. Muna is from Lebanon. She escaped the civil war there. This is set in the 80s. She goes to Montreal. Her husband is presumed dead when he's kidnapped, so she goes to Canada as they had planned with her son. She thinks she's going to be a French teacher because, you know, she was a French teacher in Lebanon. And basically it's not going to work out that way because Canada be crazy about allowing that kind of shit from other countries. My mom worked for a doctor from Lebanon. Do you know the shit she had to go through to prove she was a competent doctor every year? And she was a fucking cancer surgeon. And they're like, And everyone's like, we need that though. Tangent. So yes, comes to Canada with her son. Doesn't work out as getting a job as a teacher. Ends up working at a like weight loss hotline that like sells prepackaged foods. And basically goes from that. When she's in this job, she has just like a lot of people tell her shit. And as a person with this face that apparently makes people tell you shit, I totally fucking get it. I have had people walk up to me at like my service counter wherever I'm working and they just start telling me their lives and I'm like, did you want a stamp? Like, I don't... I'm not your therapist, get the fuck out of here! So, totally connected with it on that kind of level where you're like, why aren't you telling me this? But at the same time, when it's someone that you're like constantly talking to and they start telling you shit, you're just like, oh, baby, sweetie, like... So, yeah, I connected it on that kind of level. But what I love most about it is that it feels kind of like a love letter. Like, people, like, it's been billed as kind of like a love letter to the 80s, but I didn't get that. I mean, I loved seeing the word duotang. That's just, like, nostalgia of the word duotang for me was just, like, enough. But I don't feel like it's a love letter to the 80s necessarily. It feels a little bit like a love letter to Montreal, but like the kind when you're like in grade 6 and you like scribble out that you have a crush on someone and then it's like, do you like me? Yes, no, maybe. You know? Those kind of things. And Montreal's just kind of like indifferent to you. But you're just like, I'm here. But what it really feels like is more like a love letter to his mom, to Dimitri's mom. I mean, from what I understand, there's a similar story. He was born in Lebanon. He's lived a lot of places before coming to Canada, but like his mom being, you know, the immigrant woman that's coming and struggling and like making a life for them, it is absolutely a love letter to those kind of moms. The moms who are like, shit is bad, it's getting worse, I'm gonna do anything I can for my children. Like, that's what it feels like. So it's not necessarily just like immigrant moms, although it's some very specific, like, lots of microaggressions in this book. So many. But yeah, like, it's got that kind of, you want to stay there forever with Muna and Omar. You want to see what happens. You want to see them grow and, like, learn to love what Canada is going to be their home now. Like, I can't imagine moving halfway across the world and starting a new life. Like, how hard that must be. Like, hi, look at me, come on. But yeah, so it really felt like a love letter to his mom, and like he saw her, you know. Really, like Muna goes from like like, she's presumed widowed. Like, her husband is kidnapped and presumed dead in the war in Lebanon. And so, like, she goes from this grieving widow who is having to, like, put on a show for his family almost. And she's just like, let me just do it my way kind of thing. And, like, everyone's being a dick. Halim's family, fucking dicks, alright? But yeah, she goes from, like, a grieving widow with, like, other expectations on her to being this, like, struggling mom who has now different expectations on her, you know, in this new country that she doesn't understand fully, and this kid that she feels like she's losing. And then by the end, it's just like, we have this, like, ultimately hopeful woman who's just like, I'm doing things for me, and the things I do for me help my kid, and, like, this is what we're gonna do, and, like, I'm gonna give him a good life, but I'm gonna give me a good life too. Which I thought was really nice. Because there's a lot of times when it's like, you get stories of mothers trying to do better for their children, it's not necessarily doing better for them too. You know, so it's just, there's a lot of things going on here that just connect together to be lovely. My favorite side character is the fucking weather. Oh, I mean, if you've spent any time in Canada at all, you know we love our fucking weather. We're talking about the weather. Is it too hot? Is it too cold? Is it too dry? Is it too wet? Is it windy? Where's the wind? We haven't had rain in a while. Crops need rain. You know, like, it's just always about the weather. 100% of the time. It's like the one safe topic. And so we're just like, stick with the weather. We don't know who we're talking to here. But yeah, I love the weather in this, because, like, it is her first year in Montreal. She doesn't know what to expect. She's come from, like, a desert, basically, like a very dry, hot country. Canada in the winter be wet. It don't matter where you are, it wet. So that's just the little bit of, like, constantly being focused on the weather, and then, like, the reaction to the weather, like, Omar gets sick because his snowsuit, like, absorbs the rain one day, and she's just like, oh, fuck, you know, and then, like, they're getting sick because, you know, in springtime you always get sick when the weather changes. Like, it's just all these things that she's learning about Canada, and it often relates back to the weather. It's just like, I love it. Love it. So some things that I did not like about the book. When Muna has hot showers in the evening by herself, her dead husband, like, appears to her in the steam, and they have conversations. And sometimes I felt it was a little odd. There was times where I'm like, this is a little too much. Like, you can use it a little bit to set things up, and I'm kind of like, I'll let it go. But, like, there was some times where it was just a little too much for me, and I'm like, but then, like, there's one time where it's also like, she's actually sleeping and it's a dream, and I'm like, what's going on? This feels weird. But yeah, that I didn't like that so much. I loved the Toronto trash talk. Really, really early in the book, she's gone for an interview to be a French teacher, and the person hiring is basically like, honey, you are never going to get hired to be a French teacher in Quebec. You have an accent, you're not speaking our French, you're speaking, like, traditional French kind of thing, right? She's like, you need to just, like, go to Toronto. Go down near the 401. Any of the schools down there will be happy to have you because you can speak fluent French. And I'm just like, honey, yeah. I know a French teacher, she can't even converse in French. So, like, yeah. 10 out of 10, 100% would have gotten a fucking French teacher job in the 80s immediately. That's, like, a good example of some of the microaggressions that do happen in this book. There's another one where her boss is like, oh, I feel like you do so well talking to your clients because you have this accent, and so it's like, you're not even there, you don't really matter. Like, it's not someone you're gonna see in life, so it doesn't matter. You know this person's not ever gonna be a part of your life. And I was just like, wow! Laid it down there, Lise! But, like, same thing, like, she's looking for apartments, and people don't want to rent her an apartment because, you know, she's an immigrant, she can't prove she has a job at that point, and they're like, oh, she's gonna do these things that are gonna be weird, like, you know, the casual racism that exists in our society. Biggest example of that is definitely Monsieur Pierre, Omar's teacher. Omar ends up in like this special class where he doesn't have enough knowledge of French. So they're like holding him back, learning French as he learns the other things, kind of thing. And so there's like a parent-teacher conference. And Monsieur Pierre is like, well, you need to try harder to be, you know, part of Quebec society. And it's just like, excuse me, sir? Did y'all not just have a quiet revolution the decade before? But yeah, like, just some of the things that he says of, like, you're not French enough, you know, you need to be doing more to fit in. I was just like, I am going to end up on a tangent of racism in Canada. I hate when people say that kind of thing. Well, you're coming here, you need to be more Canadian. No, there's been bitches who have been here for like several generations. Do they not cheer for Germany in soccer? Do they not watch the Olympics and be like, woo, France? Like, do not fucking start with me, alright? You're allowed to keep your traditions and your culture. That's literally what Canada is built on. That's what makes us good. Like, fuck off. Okay. Tangent. So yes, I loved this book. I loved it so much. Like, it only has 437 ratings on Goodreads. And I'm like, yo, what? It was only published in 2022. But as you can see from the cover, it was on the Scotiabank Giller Prize long list. It's also been picked up for Canada Reads 2023. So I do expect that number is going to go up and quickly. But out of those 437 ratings, it has a 4.27, which is really good. And like, the bad reviews of it are people being stupid. I like it. Now, I feel like there's definitely going to be a disconnect between like the rest of Canada and Quebec about this book. There's a little bit of French in it. There's a little bit of Arabic. It is the 80s. We have to remember this is the 80s. He is basing it on his, you know, version of emigrating to Canada. So like, well, Quebec's not like that. You're not like that now. You know, in the 80s, there was definitely this culture of like, fucking fit in, you know? And I feel like that's what's going to make people the most upset. They're going to be like, you know, Canada doesn't do that, but we did. We did. You can't deny it. It's there. So I feel like that's going to cause a bit of like discourse about this book, I think, that, you know, but really, it's just a lovely story about a mom trying to do her best in some really shit circumstances. So yeah, I loved it. I really loved it. I think that's all I wanted to say about it. I kind of went on some tangents there, didn't I? Okay, thanks for hanging out through them. I will see you around next time.